The U.S. officials said China will face consequences if it helps Russia evade sanctions in its invasion of Ukraine. U.S. officials told multiple news outlets that China had signaled willingness to provide military assistance to Russia. As a response, China's ambassador to Ukraine said his country will never attack Ukraine following reports that Russia asked China for military and economic support for its invasion of Ukraine. U.S. officials said Russia recently reached out to China to ask for military assistance and economic aid to help with the invasion and to offset the impact of Western sanctions. China's foreign ministry denied the reports and accused the U.S. of spreading disinformation. The discussion came as pressure grows on China to withdraw support from an increasingly isolated Russia, which has been hit by a series of tough sanctions imposed by the United States and Western allies. The report came as U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met China's top diplomat Yang Jiechi for talks in Rome. Chinese officials said, Mr. Sullivan raised a range of issues in U.S.-China relations, with substantial discussion of Russia's war against Ukraine. They also underscored the importance of maintaining open lines of communication between the United States and China. At a meeting with Maxim Kozytsk, the head of the Regional Military Administration in Lviv, Chinese ambassador to Ukraine Fan Xiangong said China wanted to help rebuild Ukraine, not add to its suffering. Fan Xiangong said, China will never attack Ukraine, we will help, particularly in the economic direction. We are ready to help you develop. In this situation, which you have now, we will act responsibly. We have seen how great the unity of the Ukrainian people is. In an article for The Washington Post published, China's ambassador to the U.S. Qin Gang tried to clear the record about China's stance on Ukraine, saying it only wanted an end to the bloodshed. Qin again disputed claims that China knew about Putin's invasion in advance, and also rubbished reports saying Russia asked China for military and economic aid. Reports published earlier this month said senior Chinese officials had asked Russia to delay its invasion of Ukraine until after the Winter Olympics. Qin said, assertions that China knew about, acquiesced to, or tacitly supported this war are purely disinformation. All these claims serve only the purpose of shifting blame to and slinging mud at China. On the other side, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi says Beijing is not party in the Russia-Ukraine war as pressure grows on it to withdraw Moscow support. China's foreign minister has said his country does not want to be impacted by Western economic sanctions imposed on Russia following its invasion of Ukraine last month. He said, China is not a party to the crisis, still less wants to be affected by the sanctions. He added that China rejects sanctions in principle, and has the right to safeguard its legitimate rights and interests, calling the nearly 3-week conflict in Ukraine the product of the accumulation and intensification of European security contradictions over the years. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is changing the post-Cold War status quo, with a direct link to European security and Russia-NATO relations. While the geopolitical pressure is mostly leaning to the west of Russia, Northeast Asia is also already feeling the economic and security impact. Western sanctions against Russia have taken effect via multiple channels, crushing the country's financial stability and creating disruption for international companies operating in Russia. Understandably, while these sanctions, including import and export restrictions, are strictly aimed at Russia, its eastern neighbors, including Mongolia, China, and Japan, are also being affected in different sectors, including food supply, energy, and defense. One of the many Western sanctions tools, the Foreign Direct Product Rule, and other aggressive measures to halt Russia's import-export trade is creating a food security issue in China. Despite Xi Jinping's ambitious goals for China to become self-reliant in grain production, China has long been dependent on other countries, including Russia, Ukraine, and Japan, for wheat and other consumer products. Now, with Ukraine having stopped wheat exports because of the war, China will be among the many countries scrambling to find alternative suppliers. Western intelligence maintains that Beijing had inklings of Putin's machinations of war, a fact which makes China's mixed messaging even more striking and denotes a turning point in its position on non-interference in the internal affairs of other sovereign nations. China, in its support for Russia and its historical defense of national sovereignty, is on a tightrope. And, caught in an impossible balancing act, it is trying to play several hands at the same time. Beijing abstained from voting for the United Nations General Assembly resolution against the Russian invasion, as it did in the UN Security Council's similar proposal, struck down by a Russian veto. But last Monday, China offered to mediate when needed, as if the need were not already excruciating. In parallel, China has committed almost $800,000 in humanitarian aid to Ukraine, lamenting civilian casualties and imploring restraint, as well as refusing to provide replacement aircraft parts to Moscow. All this while underlining its alliance with Russia as one of the most crucial bilateral relations in the world. Xi Jinping's contradictions stem from his defense of the Kremlin's reasonable security concerns. To this day, he has avoided designating Russian actions in Ukraine as an invasion. On March 7, Foreign Minister Wang Yi again underlined China's commitment to its everlasting friendship and mutually beneficial cooperation with Russia, which is founded on the clear logic of history. In this string of cartwheels and pirouettes, Wang continues to say that China believes it must respect and protect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries. Of special importance in the Russian version of the joint pronouncement is the condemnation of NATO enlargement. China, until now, had avoided taking sides. In this context, we are already seeing ramifications of the war in Ukraine. It has breathed new life of NATO, generated unprecedented European unanimity, and strengthened both the transatlantic link and the image of gravitas that the United States left behind in Afghanistan. Ramifications which run counter to Xi Jinping's foreign policy interests. There is an agreement regarding the nature of the China-Russia relationship. Considering their tumultuous shared historical heritage, it has been dubbed a marriage of convenience, something temporary. The truth is that, even beyond past tensions, the two make an unlikely duo. China, an economic giant with bullish growth projections, has been striving to wield the soft power it has worked so hard to build. Russia, the epitome of revanchism, is a declining spoiler state seeking to regain former greatness by brandishing its nuclear-armed military capabilities. The growing toxicity of the China-Russia relationship is incontrovertible. It weighs down the public image that Xi Jinping, unlike Putin, has carefully sculpted, recognizing its correlation to soft power. In cozying up to Russia, Beijing shares the stage with countries like North Korea, Syria, and Belarus, which makes it difficult to sell itself as an alternative hegemonic leader. In the end, Xi Jinping's geopolitical juggling has profound implications for his number one priority, the future of Taiwan. China cannot help but notice the translatability of Ukrainian courage to Taiwan. China's support for Russia hardly squares with the cornerstones of Xi Jinping's leadership, the use of state capitalism as a gravitational field to attract others into China's orbit, respect for national sovereignty, and peaceful emergence into world leadership. For the moment, the West is winning the information war. It cannot lose sight of this. But Europe pays close attention to China's oscillations, compromises, and backroom alliances. It is proving to be an unreliable interlocutor. For this reason, the European Union's third-way mentality with Germany at the helm to maintain equal distance from the United States and China is not feasible.